We're live. It is 7:42. I was thinking that it was 6:42 for some reason, but apparently I got my hours wrong. We are here to talk about turbo manifolds. The photo that I have up, the thumbnail, is of Dodge Ram. So the 1500, 2500, the Dodge Ram. These were from an earlier 5.7, so not the later versions. I haven't taken a look at the later versions, so they might work as well or just as poorly as these ones I'm showing here. I ran a number of tests for the book that I wrote on Hemi stuff. As a matter of fact, I can probably grab a copy of that. We can take a look at that. Honda Extreme Master Hemi. Here we go. So this is the Hemi book. If you want some, I have some here. They're available. I can sell them to you, or they're available Barnes and Noble and stuff. But the reason I bring it up is because in this book I ran a few tests on exhaust manifolds. As a matter of fact, that's it right there. Stock exhaust manifolds versus headers, and I tested the SRT4 or SRT8 intake or exhaust manifolds, long tube headers, and also tested these Dodge Ram ones. And I tested these Dodge Ram manifolds, these exhaust manifolds, both naturally aspirated. If you look closely at the photo that's up there of the thumbnail, you can see there looks like there's an exhaust running from this, and there is, and they all joined over and went to a single turbo setup. So the question is, are these maybe the worst exhaust manifolds that were ever in the history of man? Please let me know in the comments. You can name off some really, really restrictive stock exhaust manifolds that you've come across. That, ones where headers, we'll get this going over here. Ones where headers maybe made a really big difference in power. I have the data here for you on a header test that I did on a Dodge using these stock exhaust manifolds flowing into basically 2.5-inch exhaust extensions. So fairly free flowing, and then versus long tube headers. And these were 1 5/8 long tube headers. Seems kind of small, but they were pretty small. So with the stock exhaust manifolds are modified. I think that this was a cammed 5.7. So let's see here. Yeah, it was a 2006 Dodge Ram 5.7. Had stock head, stock cam, stock Magnum intake manifold. Had a manual throttle body. We ran it with, I take that back. It did have a small camshaft in it. It had a comp 112-303-11, which was a 596, 582, 220, 230. So a decent sized camshaft. And then we ran it with stock exhaust manifolds, and we ran it with headers, and ran with the stock exhaust manifolds that made 406 horsepower, 407 horsepower. And then made 434 horsepower with the headers. And the nice thing about the headers, and a lot of guys still to this day, for whatever reason, don't seem to understand that the headers, they don't just gain power at the top, and long runners don't make more power at the top. Short, like especially this Ram manifold, these stock exhaust manifolds are very, very short. And for some reason, guys seem to think that, they're going to make a lot more torque. No, they're terrible. They're terrible everywhere. They made less power than the headers did. We ran it from 2,900 to 6,400, and there were big gains everywhere. That's the nice thing about long tube headers is they also make substantial gains down in the lower RPM range. So the stock exhaust manifolds made 418 foot-pounds, and these made 439 foot-pounds. So quite a bit of not only peak torque, but a big railroad track gain basically all the way through the curve. So the headers, the motor was much happier with the headers everywhere. So headers make a big difference when you're comparing them to the stock exhaust manifolds. Let's see. We're going to put our poll up. Have you ever run? This is a stock cam with boost. Okay, so we're talking about manifolds, but the poll is going to be about camshafts because we're talking about stock stuff tonight. So I'm curious how many people have ever run a stock camshaft with boost. Could be any motor. Could be an LS, a Dodge, a small block Chevy, an import, Honda, Toyota, whatever it is. Have you ever run boost with something that had a stock camshaft? And then let me know in the comments how did it work out. So that will be our poll. And before we get going some more on the Dodge Ram, I had something kind of cool happen to me today. So you can see I've got some coins here. So I went to 7-Eleven to grab something, and they gave me change back. And then I noticed the change looked a little odd because I look for this stuff. So in the change that they gave me 2 wheat pennies, which are the older ones. So on the back they have the little wheat things on them, and all in the same group, and a 1927 Buffalo nickel. So big score on the change, and they all came. I don't know how long that stuff was sitting there. Maybe since 1927, but somebody probably just brought in their old stuff and was spending it, I'm guessing. But I need to check and see if this was a 27S or any of the valuable ones. I just thought it was cool that as soon as he handed it to me, I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then I was also I got quarters back too, so I was looking for some silver quarters, but there were none. But the Buffalo nickel was kind of cool. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. Wheat pennies I have quite a few of, but and I have one that's fairly valuable on the wheat penny side. I don't have any Buffalo nickels, but now I have one, so that's kind of cool. I just throw them all off to the side. On the exhaust manifolds on the Hemi, the question being is we gained a lot of power with the stock exhaust manifolds. And the thing is, as we go up in power, particularly on this type of setup with this exhaust manifold on a Hemi, as we go up in power, those stock exhaust manifolds on the Ram, because the way that they were designed was probably more for packaging than anything. The Hemi is really kind of wide in terms of the cylinder heads and stuff. And I'm sure that they had, and at the angle that it comes out, I'm sure that they had packaging issues and they had to make them that way. But they fit in the truck and are clearance for everything that they need to clear. But the problem is they obviously are fairly restrictive. Headers go a long way toward helping a Hemi, as we've shown on the naturally aspirated side. And also, I'm sure this was something that we were talking about either this morning, probably yesterday, where we were talking about the different exhaust manifolds and how they might be affected under boost. So with the long tube headers, would we get power gains from long tube headers under boost? This is one of the applications where I can almost guarantee that we would, given the power gain that we got from the header over the stock exhaust manifolds. Obviously, a good portion of that, or maybe even all of it, is scavenging from the header, certainly the stuff down low. But this is also a flow issue too, because these things don't flow well. So I think on a turbo application, if we start running into a flow issue in the exhaust manifold, we could see even more gain. So it'd be interesting to monitor the back pressure in both setups and run, even if he didn't run full length headers like we did on this test when we did the NA motor, even if we just did the tubular ones like the ones that we use on the LS and stuff on the Hemi, which we made adapter plates, and so an LS one will actually bolt right up to that with the adapter plates, because the spacing is very, very, very similar. So we in a comparison between those two, I think on a turbo application, I think that the long tube headers would show a gain there, where maybe they don't on other applications where the exhaust manifold is a lot better. Another good example is one of the tests I did in the book is the SRT8 manifolds are actually pretty good. And Dodge, if through the years, and probably other people have had weird ones too, but Dodge has had some fairly cool exhaust manifolds, big cast iron ones. And so I think that they did a good job on the design of the SRT8 stuff. On the Ram stuff, that's more pedestrian, and I don't think that they were too concerned about maximizing the power output. But with the SRT8, they definitely were. They used a different intake manifold, different heads, and different camshaft. Obviously, all of that stuff worked out fairly well. It made good power, and then now they're into all of the newer stuff. So, but I did use those exhaust manifolds to make a DIY turbo kit. I actually think that the turbo kit that I used, and I may still have this sitting around somewhere, this may have been from one that Jimmy at HP Performance did. He may have done this single turbo kit, or we may have, I don't remember, we may have built it and just run a Y up to a turbo deal. But I think it came from Jimmy. And it was designed to work like on a Ram, on a truck or a car with that 5.7 with those tight exhaust manifolds. And the thing is, even though it was obviously fairly restrictive, as we saw by the results from the header test, And yet it still works under boost. If you put boost on these exhaust manifolds, you flow all the exhaust. Like I said, you flow all the exhaust from the motor to a turbo, good things will happen. And that's exactly what happened here. Although, again, I would really like to see what the difference would be if we actually did, a verified test of running them both, one with stock exhaust manifolds and one with long tube headers, and then run the same turbo and run it at a reasonable power level. I mean, we showed it, obviously it gained a lot of power, even NA. So even at a 400 to 420 or 30 horsepower level, it gained quite a bit. So you'd think that at 500, 600, 700, that maybe you would gain even more power, but that's why we have to test it. But I do like the Hemi stuff, and I'm excited about my Buffalo nickel. Let's see what you guys got going on. Let's see how our poll is doing. Have you ever run a stock cam with boost? Only about half of you have. So people that are doing boost are also camshaft people. And speaking of camshafts, I spoke to Brian Tooley today, and somebody here had a question, and I was looking for your comment, and I was looking for the question. I thought that you had sent me an email about the valve springs and the titanium retainers and the hot rod cam, about wanting to rev it or something. So if you're here, please chime in and I can answer your question. The answer is you don't need a titanium retainer to make that setup work. Top chat, and we're going to go over to live chat. Is a sloppy stage 2 cam any good? Yes, if you want to see how good it is, you can look at the many videos that I have up where we used it as a camshaft and tested it against a lot of other camshafts, and it does what you would expect. That cam that has 228 degrees of intake duration, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Bob, are the books autographed? They can be. Video idea, would you make or lose power running just straight heads with no headers? You would lose power, most definitely. And I don't know of anybody that would run the motor at wide open throttle for a dyno pull without some sort of exhaust on there. I've been told it's bad for the valves or whatever. I don't know that that's actually true, but we do know that it wouldn't make good power. Ford V10, Dodge V10, that would be good. I'm not as interested in the Dodge V10, but I definitely would like to do the Ford one. Stock manifolds in the GS460 are ridiculous. The GS460 is a smaller car than the LS460. So it has less room, less engine packaging room. Sonny's Hemi 828 Ford yesterday saw 1,700 on the dyno screen. That's a lot. 351 Boss Cleveland exhaust. So the factory exhaust on the Cleveland is not any good. I don't know that I've ever seen a stock Cleveland exhaust manifold. Maybe on a Pantera, although I think most of them that I've seen have some sort of header on them. Stock Gen 2 LT1 intake or exhaust manifolds. Hey man, I know you're talking about Hemis, but I have a 5-3 swap question. You can ask, and so everybody knows this is a question and answer period. You can ask whatever question you want, so just ask. Boat Hemi or tractor pulls for the Sonny's motor. Stock cam was good. Different cam was more good. Was more gooder, right? 1.8 turbo Jetta did a strange stage 3 tune, bigger turbo injectors, ran 24 pounds of boost for the stock cams. I've run obviously lots of turbos on stock cam stuff. Building a 408 Cleavor, I guess. I'm thinking the R is left off there. CHI 208 heads, those are good. Looking for 500 to 600 horsepower. The range between 500 and 600 horsepower is a lot. Takes a much different package to make 600 horsepower than it does to make 500. 500 is very, very easy. 600 is certainly possible, but it's a little bit more work. Takes really good cylinder heads and much more camshaft. Roller rocker, cam package. We're wondering what would be a good choice for cam. Michael, take a look at the 408 small block Ford videos I have up. You'll have really good heads on it. We had trick flow heads on it, which were good. the CHI 208s are pretty good heads. So you have a good thing going there with plenty of head flow, and not only just lots of head flow, but those are pretty efficient heads. They make good power. So take a look at the two cams that I ran on the 408, give you an idea on camshafts. Saw a Roush yesterday. Boost on a stock cam didn't work out too well for Freiberger on an episode of Roadkill. What RAM Hemi headers did I run? I think I tested some Cooks, I know. And also tested some, I think Hooker sent these. Yeah, we had Cooks. We had, let's see. Hooker, yeah, we had another set of Hookers too that we tested. I don't know what chassis they were for though. They were just long tube headers. And we also tested shorty headers. SST manifold upgrade. What is Sean? You got to explain to me what an SST is. I ran a stock carburetor cam on a 2.2 Chrysler. Yeah, the carburetor or the TBI, I think, are the good ones, right? Some 8-year-old buying candy from his grandpa's coin collection. Yeah, I don't think that they're big money coins, but it's just kind of cool to see it. Let's see. Supposedly had 3 more degrees of duration. I've looked up the specs on the cams, and I don't know about the difference between the carbureted one would be early though, right? The 2.2 is together. The only thing I don't have on it is I think just the oil pan. Nimbly, that was me about the BTR hot rod cam warning. Yeah, I talked to Brian about that. Send me another email, or send me a comment. Yeah, just send me an email, and so I can get it over to Brian, because he wants to know what people are saying in customer service, what they're telling you, and he just wants to verify that it's accurate. Will nitrous eat titanium valve train? No. I think they should make cams and lifters out of titanium. Did they clarify the cause for the 6,500 RPM limit on the camshaft? No, I need to see what you're talking about. We ran ours over. We ran the hot rod cam over 6,500, so we know. And there's no, and we just did it with a beehive spring with no titanium retainer, so we know that it will work. On a bone stock Pontiac 400, put on a 7675 on 3 turbo, 12 pounds, so double horsepower, maybe. Ran it for a day testing, pulled and modified everything. Did it work? I mean, did it make more power? I mean, obviously it made more power. Tom, standing by my press, pressing the trunnions. Do you have the tool for it? Are you using a vise, or do you actually have a press? Why is an L3 valve spring so low in the seat and open pressure compared to small block Chevy stuff with a similar roller cam? Well, one of the reasons is that you have a much, much lighter valve in a LS than you do in a small block Chevy. And you have a beehive spring. The worst stock manifold is a B12 rotary. Wow. Do nitrous engines and boost engines use a similar camshaft? If not, what's the difference? They can. You can certainly run nitrous with any camshaft. You can run boost with any camshaft. You don't have to run dedicated cams for those. Especially if it's any kind of street or street strip motor. If you put a Truck Norris camshaft in your motor, you can run a turbo on it. You can also run nitrous on it. If you put a stage 2 turbo camshaft in there, you can run a turbo on it. You can run nitrous on it. Just either one of those, just start from wherever the NA power is, whatever the NA power curve looks like, whatever the camshaft that you put in there, whatever power curve it creates, you just add boost and it just makes more of that. If you add nitrous, it just makes more of that. The Pontiac ran pretty good. It bent 14 push rods on the first hit. Saw Pantera convention at Point Roberts in Northwest Washington Strait near Vancouver. Great application for the 351. Arguably certainly the best looking, I think. Header makes a huge difference on a rotary. Yeah, I have run. I'm thinking we did run a header, but we did it on a chassis dyno. What's your take on integrated exhaust manifolds coming out these days? How much of a future and do they have in performance? I don't think that they're not doing it for performance. They're usually doing it for cat light off. That being said, I've seen some fairly good applications where running these with turbos is the way to go. I still am not convinced that it's the way to go for a turbo application. Have you used toluene or toluene as an octane booster? I have not. Unless it was in an octane booster that I used, but I haven't mixed it myself with anything. Airplane engines don't really have exhaust pipes. They do have stacks, right, that are about this long on them. Which engine combination would yield best street performance at part through half throttle, where we spend 99% of the time on the street? So then you're not asking for a performance application, right? You're asking for drivability. Let's see. Sean, SST 1500 RAM. So what is an SST? I don't know what that designation means. Indy pace trucks. What's the maximum amount of boost you can run on a stock LS3 intake manifold? I've never pressure tested an LS3 manifold, but we've run 28 pounds on factory composite intake manifolds. Richard, I'd love to see a comparison like yours, air to air versus air to water, but also see no intercooler. I have an intercooler, a no intercooler combination video up there. The no intercooler definitely makes less power. 63 300J with 412 long cross ram had exhaust manifolds that reached under the car. They went down and under, right? They're really, really long, I think. That's kind of cool. I'll track down your in my email. I'll send it to you nimbly. Killer B16. There we go. You ever heard of FST carburetors? And do they have any experience with them or heard anything good or bad? Is it fuel system technology is out there? I think we've run those at Westech before. The SST 1500 Dodge Ram Magnum. Sean, are you talking? Is this a Magnum exhaust manifold and not a Hemi manifold? Because the one that I'm showing is a Hemi, and that's the one that we were talking about. If you're talking about, are you talking about 360 Magnum manifolds? I've dyno tested both of those, and I think I have that video up. So if that, I don't know what SST means, so I don't know if that's the designation for it. But I have tested two different 360 Magnum exhaust manifolds. One of them is bigger than the other, with the exit is bigger. And it definitely did make more power. It's not 15 though. At least it wasn't in my test. Does the stock cam my grandma supercharged 3800 Buick part? Yeah, that totally counts. That's boost and a stock cam, right? So yeah. Have you ever run a stock cam with boost? 45% saying yes. And so we have more no's than yeses. Dan, that log style exhaust manifold definitely will improve fitment. Hydraulic press and washers that come with the trunnion kit. Yeah, that makes life easy. Can plastic intake manifold intake take things like nitrous and heavy boost? Any precautions needed? No, they're fine. Like I said, we've run 28 pounds on them, so you're not going to break it unless you backfire it. That boost level is beyond what 99.9% of the people do. What about a dyno test for lobe separation? Just go look up lobe separation and video, and it's already up there. Ask and you shall receive. The Pantera had a manifold that was more like a header. Okay. I've tried toluene in my 68 Chrysler with a built 440, and it did take care of the pinging. Recommendations for a 6.4 Hemi. The truck does not miss a fuel station. So the biggest thing that I would tell you about improving the fuel mileage is the way that you drive. And then maybe a tune might help. If anybody out there has done tunes on Hemis, can you improve cruise fuel mileage? Can I put a Hellcat supercharger on a 5.7 in a Chrysler 300? It's probably adaptable, but you would need everything probably. And I don't know if the Hellcat supercharger, I don't know if the early, and I don't know if the hood is going to clear, and I don't know what heads you have on there. I don't know if the bolt pattern on the early heads is the same as the later Hellcat heads. Building a turbo 350 small block Chevy. I want reliability, so I decided to go forged pistons and rods with some good heads to get my compression ratio right. Should I do the forged crank? How much can work crank really handle? I'm sure you mean a cast crank. I've never broken a cast crank, and so we've done 1,500 horsepower stuff with cast cranks. So I don't think you're going to hurt the crank from a strength standpoint. A tune standpoint, miss on that, over rev, don't get oil to it. All of those things would be a problem. But the piston and the rods are usually the first things to break. Let's see. Do you know of anybody that ran a VS Racing or Speedmaster centrifugal supercharger? VS Racing offers a centrifugal supercharger. I know that they do turbos. They're universal. I was thinking of buying one and fabbing up a lot since they aren't expensive. I don't know of anybody who has. I've never run one. Lucas, performance in the sense of making a daily driver truck not drive like a pig, passing power, etc. So you don't go to full throttle when you're looking for more power? I'm just asking. I'm just trying to figure out what it is you're trying to do. If you want more low speed and mid-range power, then if you're going to go with boost, then you want immediate boost. So whatever will provide that, a root supercharger or a twin screw will provide immediate boost much more than a centrifugal will, and to some extent more than a turbo will until you get load on it, and it depending on how you size your turbo. So if that's what you want, that will do it. There's downsides to all of them. There's downside. The centrifugal I wouldn't pick for that application. A turbo I would if I size the turbo small enough to where you have boost while you're rolling in. That's not hard to do. You aren't going to have the response rate that you have with a positive displacement supercharger like a Roots or a twin screw. But what those things give up is, even though they might have boost immediately when you get into the throttle, they also, none of them have long run or intake manifolds. So they give up that part of the torque. So there's always some kind of trade-off. But those would be the ones that I would look at. My 82 5-liter had a crane cam. Mine had a crane cam in it for a long time. My 5-liter did. Building an LS BMW Gen 4 aluminum 6.2, worth it over a Gen 3 iron 6-liter. That's all up to you. If you're going to make lots and lots of power with a turbo, I would pick the iron one. If it's going to be an NA motor and you're going to be driving around, aluminum one's going to help in every other aspect. It's going to make lots of power because it's a 6.2 more than a 6.0, so it's going to make more power. If it's a 6.2 and it's some sort of factory one, it already came with aluminum heads and a really good, rec port heads and a really good intake manifold, and then you just got to add a camshaft to it. It's lightweight. It helps with acceleration. It helps with braking. It helps with handling. So it has a lot of things going for it. Casey, I voted no, but I tried to hook a smog pump up to a mini bike. That totally counts. Hose clamp. I got a different restriction question. Inch and 7/8 primaries, 3-inch collector, long tubes. Would you consider them restrictive with a 557 moving 13 or 1030 CFM at 6500 full length dual 3-inch electric cutouts? If it's a 557 big block, I would have a bigger than inch and 7/8 primaries. If you have inch and 7/8 primaries feeding into turbos, that might be something different. But if that's an NA motor on our NA 557, we ran 2 1/8 or 2 1/4 inch headers on it. During your back-to-back comparison test, do you keep the calibration constant or do you optimize fuel and spark for each combination? All of them, like if we run 2 camshafts on an LS, the air fuel is exactly the same. The timing, the air fuel number is the same. You have to add fuel to, like if you run a stock camshaft and you run it at 13.0 because it's an NA motor, or 12.8, whatever the number is, and you run it at 12.8, and then you put a camshaft in it, you got to run it at 12.8 again. And to do that, because the camshaft makes more power, you have to add fuel to it because it wants to breathe more air. It has to have more fuel to keep the air fuel constant. When I do an LS test, the timing, we can try changing timing, but it doesn't change anything. It wants if it wants 29 degrees of timing, have total timing at the power peak, that's going to stay consistent because that's almost determined by the combustion chamber of the head. And since that hasn't changed, when we do a head test, I'll sweep timing because having done hundreds and hundreds of these, we have a pretty good idea of what's going on. But you don't, your new camshaft doesn't require different timing. Daryl, 360, 4.9 liter, 302. All of those engines were offered in a Pantera. Hang on, does it count if it came stock in that motor or in a different car, but not in your specific motor? It doesn't matter. Does it? Is the camshaft stock? You can put whatever definition in stock that you want. The only reason that you stopped at 28 pounds is because you had a 2R map. That was actually over 29 pounds, but that's what we stopped on the Big Bang motor. But not. I thought that the question was, if this is a reference to that, the question was testing the pressure on the intake manifold. We didn't do that on the Big Bang, on the Gen 4 Big Bang motor. That had an aluminum intake manifold on it. I hope you still want to do a carb and CFM test between a 400 or a 500 horsepower big block and a small block. So you want to see if both of those have the same airflow, right? To see if they both make the same power and one of them does it at 5,000 RPM and the other one does it at 6,000 RPM. Do they make the same? Is it the same amount of airflow? Is that what you want to see? I want to see that also. Have you ever done a test between a 91 to 96 and 97 and up 4.3 liter W motor? What is a 4.3 liter W motor? Let's see. Man, I got to scroll down past. Let's see. There is an adapter kit to install a Hellcat blower on earlier engines. I've done Mopar tuning. Yes, you can improve cruise mileage with fuel trims and increase cruise timing. Requires logging to see where to add timing. I would think. I just didn't know. I don't know what the factory tunes are like on those things. But I know that most people with Hemis complain about the fuel mileage in them. Just finished my truck tonight and took it around the block, and I couldn't do it without all of your advice and knowledge. Thank you. I'm glad that getting behind the wheel and actually driving it around is very, very cool. I'm very excited about the Omni GLHS deal as soon as I get that, as soon as it warms up. 4.7 Ram, 4-gen long tube header will Hemi, will it fit? I don't know about a 4.7. I don't think I may have seen one in the wrecking yard, but I've never looked at them closely. I've run JBA engine 7.8 headers with the Jade Green 2.HL cam, and we've been happy. They dwarf the stock exhaust manifolds. What about a Rumblebee? Dude, why would you ditch your TRXs, man? The TRXs, that was it. What's machine shop rework of a V8 cost in California? I don't know. Hope you don't wash away in the atmospheric river. What were they calling it? They're calling it a cyclone bomb or something ridiculous. It just looks like rain to me. According to Wikipedia entry, all Panteras were 351 Clevelands. Richard, I have a 66 Mustang with a 4.6 liter 4-valve. I'm installing a turbo next to the passenger side fender. Could I mount the turbo to the frame for support, or will the heat transfer to the frame? You can't support it off the frame because the engine has to rock, and the turbo will be connected to the exhaust manifold on the motor. So the motor is going to want to torque, and if you stop that, I don't know that that's a good idea. You should secure it to the motor. Ryan, hi Richard. This is from Awesome. A few weeks ago, I broke 2 bolts on the motor, and you and the guys on Thread Advice got me out of hot water. Good. See, they have good advice here, man. The Ram 4.7 liter needs a dyno day. So that's the pre-Hemi one, right? Reloading, I'd like to see what will happen with the CFM on the test between a big block or some bigger motor that makes peak power lower than a smaller motor, but they make the same peak power. So we want to see the airflow at different, all the way through the RPM range, which we would see if we had an air hat on. So this would be much easier. We'll just do it with a carbureted combination. Yeah, James, I try to tell people that, and they don't understand it. They race around in it, and they're half throttle or better, leaving from every light, racing around, driving like you would, because you're exercising your God-given right to drive a V8 automobile, and your mileage is accordingly. And then complain about, while they're driving around like that, they complain about my thing gets terrible mileage. It doesn't stop them from, like, you could get better mileage if you just take off easy and cruise around and don't drive like a knucklehead. But honestly, what fun is that? So you pay the price. But that's the single biggest thing you can do. Putting a better tune in it, or changing to, because we've done all kinds of stuff when we're trying to get hyper mileage stuff on, like on the Civic. You can pump the tire pressure up, you can change the aero, put belly pans on it, take off accessories. We were doing lean burn on that. We tried different injector spray patterns, all kinds of things. But really, cruising at 65 miles an hour is the best thing that you could do, and not be racing it around. That's the slower that you drive and the less throttle that you have, the better off you are. Abiel Ellis is in San Diego, if that's what you're asking about. I saw 3 or 4 Panteras at show, and they were all Windsors. I've never seen a Pantera with a factory Windsor in it. I've only seen them with Cleveland's. I'm not saying that they didn't have them, but I've never seen one like that. We used to race out at the Silver State. We called it the Pantera Graveyard, because everybody that brought them out there would quickly break down. Usually they would overheat. Trunnions are done. Good to hear it, man. Going from 1.6 rocker arm to 1.7, do I need longer rocker studs? No. If you have, are you doing this on an LS? I hope not. Are you doing this on a Ford? What are you doing it on? Does it already have factory rocker studs? Not factory. Does it already have rocker studs on it and guide plates? You got to tell me about the application. But if they're both the same kind of roller rocker, the rocker stud length is not going to change. Sensible throttle application is never the answer. Exactly, right? Was the Hemi a magic cylinder head, or not better than the others? The Hemi head's a lot better than the Magnum that it replaced. Certainly, it flows a ton more than, just like the LS head is better than the small block Chevy head. They flow a lot more, especially when we get up into the LS3 stuff, and now the Gen 5 stuff's even better. The Hemi head, and certainly the later Hemi head stuff, way better in terms of head flow than the previous generation stuff. That's part of why they make a lot more power. They also had really good intake manifolds. The Hemi does. If you do this test, maybe 3 motors would be possible. Now you're asking for a lot more. 302, a 383, and a 496. You don't need an intermediate one. You can just put the intermediate, slot the intermediate one if there's any difference between the big one and the small one. The GMW 4.3 liter engine had the highest output for the naturally aspirated engines. All right, is this a 4.3 liter V6 like the Vortec V6? Is that what you're talking about? Is it the 200 horsepower one that they had in the NA version that they had in the Astro vans and stuff? Is that the one that you're talking about? Yes, the 5 liter Fords, 157, 175, 210, 200 or 205 was the it was 200 was the first the 86 EFI, right? Something like that, 200 or 205, and then 225 for the later ones. Is a V10 Magnum worth building? Yeah, it's a 10 cylinder engine. Obviously it's going to be awesome. The TRX tires were terrible. They really were. Get the Goodyear stuff of the time, the Gatorbacks were a lot better. Maldonado, you're doing a big bore 4.8 liter. Good. How often do you see bent camshafts on new cams from the factory? Mine had 2,500 run out in the middle bearing. I was told it was common and to send it back. It didn't turn too freely. Did someone drop that one? Found out how loose my truck is. When 10 pounds of boost hits, didn't think 36-inch tires could break loose in third gear. It's a good feeling, right? To spin big meats like that. Do you have any way to get a hold of David Vizard? He's local to me, and I would love for him to spec me a cam. You can go to his. Everybody should that hasn't yet should go to David Vizard's channel. Go look up David Vizard and go to his YouTube channel. You could send him a message on there. Maybe he'd be interested in talking to you. I worked on Triton V10 van motors, compression tests are no fun. It's hard to access all that stuff. Did you ever get to see the Gottlieb Big Red Camaro run at the Silver State? Yeah, we did. I was there the first year, so and was there for the first 12 years. So we got to see him run. Got to meet those guys. In fact, we offered them I met them down before the Silver State. We met them at the and Eric from West Tech does the tuning for Big Red. So that car and those guys have been over to West Tech a whole bunch. But the at the what was it called? The La Carrera race down in Mexico, similar open road race kind of thing. They were up all night working on it. And we said, look, if you guys, they didn't have a room. So we said, look, just take our room. You guys can have our room and stay in there. They ended up not using because they ended up staying up all night to work on the car to get it to run. But it was, that car was impressive. They said they got bent in shipping. I mean, can you straighten it? I've seen guys straighten cranks, so you might be able to straighten the camshaft. Have you done any videos on cam LSA effects on boost? It's more LSA better for boost. You need to stop thinking about it in terms of LSA and boost. You need to think about what the cam does to low speed power. If the camshaft, whatever you're doing to it, or anything else, the intake manifold, the cylinder heads, the displacement, the compression, does that improve low speed NA power? If the answer is yes to that, and I had this discussion with Brian tonight, these are the things. Because we were talking about the different cams and them figuring out, because they did a bunch of testing with particularly we were talking about the hot rod cam and the Truck Norris cam, and how that they were telling people that, and because the hot rod cam originally was an LS3 cam, but they also used it for a bunch of positive displacement blower testing. I'm like, yeah, it makes more power than the blower cams do because it doesn't have 150 degree LSA. So it look at the LS9 cam, really wide LSA, very soft in the middle through most of the curve compared to other camshafts. And when you put a camshaft in it that's like an NA cam or turbo cam, and it makes a much more low speed power. If you can get the camshaft to do that by whatever kind of trickery you're doing, if it makes more low speed power, it will be better for boost. Yes, NA horsepower, 200 Vortex. Yeah, just wonder if you ran the two different intakes under boost. I have not. Not on the. I've never run either one of those factory intake manifolds. I like the intake manifold design on the 200 horsepower version, but I only ran those carbureted. Hope to see some future uploads with the stock bottom end 351 Windsor. You can help me pick out a cam and large heads that fit with stock football pistons. I recently found out GM is an 8.8 liter. Yeah, they do. What the heck did they call that? I was talking to the guy that does all the 8.1 stuff, and they have the 8.8 also. Richard, would you have a cam recommendation for a 93 Lincoln Mark 8 with mildly ported B heads? I only have tested a few cams on the B heads. I don't think that there's anything specific about B heads. I think Mahovitz has tested a few, but usually his are dedicated race deals. But the 262 cam that I ran in the non B headed stuff, in the later 03 Cobra stuff, works in the B headed stuff just like it does in the other one. So I assume the other ones do the same thing. Do you have the visor ported head on 2.2? I don't have the head yet. So I just, and right now I'm just running stock heads on their RE stock head. If you do a V10 Ford, replace the cylinders. Is an inline 6 more desirable than a V6? Usually that choice would probably be packaging more than anything else. Do any of your 351 Windsor uploads have stock pistons? Yes. The upgrade that I did, the Big Bang one, is a stock piston and rod. The Edelbrock one was a stock piston and rod deal too. So are you insinuating that a cam that is strong in the low end will help spool up a turbo? I'm not insinuating that. I'm flat out saying that that's 100% true. Anything that you do to improve low speed power, NA will improve boost response. Anything that you do. If you hit nitrous at 2000 RPM, you'll spool the turbo up. If you put a long runner intake manifold on it and it helps power down low, it will help spool the turbo up. The thing that spools the turbo up is more low speed NA power. Let's see how our. Have you ever run a stock cam with boost? 57% are saying no. Barton, that's what it's called, the PSI engine, the 8.8 PSI engine, Power Solutions International, used for buses and generators and pumps and stuff. The guy has a couple of those, and he said he'd let me run one, so that would be kind of cool. Dan's in the house. And the other thing about camshafts, which we've gone over many, many times, is that you should look at it as a starting point. Put in my tortoise shell glasses, not made from real tortoises. The thing you should think about with your camshaft is your camshaft is the starting point. So whatever power curve your camshaft produces, boost is just going to add to that. So if you have a 400 horsepower combination with your camshaft and you want to double it, then you get 800 horsepower. If you, with 14.7 pounds of boost, if you have a camshaft that makes 450, then you'll get 900. If assuming again that all the things are right, that you have enough turbo to support that. That's how it all works. Low amounts of nitrous, 50 shot to help with lag. Yeah, a lot of guys do that with big turbos. Some of the drift guys do that with big turbos. Some of the drag race guys do that. 8V, what is it you're talking about with the red line? I'm trying to see what the first thing was that I missed. And then subsequently, I don't have information after that. Richard, you got to run one of those 8.8s. I agree. I think that will be cool. They should be super torquey, I would imagine. The 8-liter GM, the 8.8 liter GM. I've talked to the guy at length about it. I have an 8.1, 265 horsepower. Yeah, he's got some cool stuff for him. Anyone see Fab Rat's big block Ford underwater for 30 years and it still ran? Yeah, James, that's the cool thing is it has forged stuff on it. So if you put ported heads and an intake and a camshaft in it, should have a big bang winner that probably could beat the LS, right? Let's see. Fossil fuels, another Mark 8 question. Tony Angelo, grenaded a C-headed 4.6. Is the problem all the cast internals on these? You just can't handle 15 pounds of boost. We've run way more than 15 pounds on stock stuff, so I can't tell you that that's the problem. I don't think that it is. We ran way over 20 pounds on stock for 03 Cobra stuff, and I know that had forged stuff in it, but I feel pretty confident given what we've done with the LS that we can pretty easily run that kind of boost and have it live. Reloading, you have an 8 liter from PSI. It's an 8 liter and not an 8.1? Is a 4.7 Dodge V8 worth keeping? Yeah, according to who's our resident Admiral. I think he's the 4.7 guy. Some diesels at 45 plus pounds. See, that's good. That had stock cams in it, right? Brandon, what is it you want a cam for? What application is it? LT is building a PSI motor. Have you ever run a test on a Ford V10? I have not. I would like to. I've seen a few of them in wrecking yards. So, Brandon, what are you trying to do? 5.7 bore 4.8. So you de-stroked an LS1? Or big board of so you put a 5.7 bore, a 3.900 bore in a 4.8. That will work. But what is it you're trying to do with it though? Well, like what power output do you want? What RPM do you want? What is it you're trying to get done? Peak torque is at 1500 RPM. Peak horsepower is at 2600. I'll be curious to see what kind of intake manifold they have on that. It's got to have no cam timing in it then. Reloading funds, an 8 liter uses a Gen 6 big block, but with 10.2 deck height, 4270 bore by 4250 stroke. It's not the 8.1 that it's not the Gen 7 motor. Really like to see boost on my 496, just afraid of the 50-year-old block breaking. Richard, how good is the Lincoln Continental 464 valve intake manifold for boost? I don't know. The manifold itself for boost will work fine. I just don't know about that particular manifold as an NA manifold because that's the real question. The question has nothing to do with boost. The intake manifold, I don't know how well that works compared to other stuff. Is that the B-headed one that has a bunch of spaghetti tubes on it? Like, Brandon, so you want to make 800 horsepower? Please tell me that's with boost, right? The cams I have behind me, one of them is a solid roller cam. The other one is some kind of LS cam that got damaged or something. Is there a range of cam timing that cooperates better with iron manifolds versus headers, like for fast racing? I think you'd have to get really, really specific about what you were trying to do. Like if you were running in some kind of class that required a particular cast iron manifold, that you had to have some kind of particular exhaust with it and whatever head combination you had, an intake manifold combination, there might be a camshaft that would be tailored to that specific combination, but not one that would like manifolds better than headers as a universal thing. Yeah, reloading. I'll have to send me pictures of it. I have to take a look and see. I know that they had an L21 and an L29 7.4, but I wasn't familiar with the 8 liter. I am familiar with the 8.1 and the 8.8, but the 8 liter I haven't seen that. I would bet the cam was a Richard Holder 1000, the T1000. The school bus 8.8 has a flywheel housing set up for an Allison 1000, 2000 series transmission. The 8.1 was the same bell housing as the big block. Oh, it has to appear stock. Okay. Peter, yeah, I don't think I've tested that particular intake that I remember. I've tested the Sullivan, I've tested the Cobra, I've tested the Aviator, I think was the other one. The marketing dyno plot for the 8.8 stops at 20, all the way up at 2600. They're really revving it out there. S475 twin entry header setup on a 90 Toyota pickup. Okay, you don't need a custom camshaft to make 800 horsepower with an S475 and a 4.8, especially a big bore one. You can put whatever kind of camshaft in it you want, and you also don't have to rev it to 7,500 unless that's part of the deal. But 7,500, if you want to make power there, first of all, I don't recommend it because it's not necessary. But if you want to, you can put a biggish cam in a 4.8 and then put a short runner intake manifold on it and then put a turbo on it. And it's going to be soft and laggy. It's not going to be a good combination. You'd be much better off putting like a Fast or a Truck or a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on it and putting a reasonable camshaft in it and then revving it to 7,500 and it will be fine. You can do that with like 100 different off-the-shelf camshafts. Do you think the VS Racing next gen billet 7875 is maxed out at 1,000? I think it will do more than 1,000 flywheel, but I don't know how much more. Is that the one that I have is a Gen 2? I think he has a Gen 3, and maybe next gen is another one above that. But a 78 millimeter compressor, I think, will do more than that, and it's going to depend a little bit on the motor that you're trying to do it on. Two more minutes. We're going to go ahead and close out our poll at 57% saying no, they have not run a stock cam with boost. Next gen is the Gen 2. Okay, that's the one that I have. I think it will do 1,000, and it might do more on a 4.8 or a 5.3. I've never tried to max it out, though. It probably would do a little more. But the problem that I always find with guys that want to do more with those things is that's when you get into trouble. If you really want to do more than 1,000, you should pick a bigger turbo. If you really want to make more than that on some of these superchargers, I make this kind of power with it. Great. Well, you're spinning the hell out of the blower. You're getting belt slippage. You're fighting that. You're doing all those things. You just it's so much easier just to put the right thing on it. No, I'm going to max out this M90. Just put a bigger supercharger on it, or better yet, put a turbo on it, and it'll be so much easier, and you'll make lots more power. I've always said this. I applaud the guy that goes to the ends of the earth to do the thing with the little thing that you shouldn't be doing. That's fantastic. I like it. But it is a lot easier to just do it with the right kind of thing. What transmission came with the 4.2 liter? We have an adapter plate that mounts the 4.2 to a Chevy bell housing. Okay, cool. I'm using a Trailblazer SS. I was using the 128 formula visor said 109-ish LSA. Yeah, you're welcome to do whatever you want with David and his formula. Who he doesn't apply that to LS motors, by the way. That formula was actually designed for small block Chevys, but that's okay. You can David's a great guy. He's very knowledgeable, and if you want to run with that, you can. What I'm telling you is that making your power, you don't need any sort of custom camshaft for that. I can walk over to the shelf of LS camshafts, close my eyes, and grab a cam off the shelf, and your 78 S475 turbo will make 1,000 horsepower with it. I don't even have to look at it. I just have to know that I grabbed it from the shelf that fits available piston to valve clearance. But it could be a 206 cam, it could be a 212, a 218, a 220, a 230, a 235, as long as it fits. All of those camshafts you can make 1,000 horsepower with. So forget about that part of it. Now the part of it you should be concerned with is, okay, I can make that kind of power. The turbo will do that. If you have an LS motor, you have even stock heads on it, you have that truck manifold or Trailblazer SS, you have this turbo, you have an intercooler, you have good fuel or the right amount of fuel and timing. Now, what do I want the camshaft to do? Do I want it to drive nice? Do I want it to have chop? Do I want it to work with a stock converter? Do I want it to, am I driving it around to, do donuts or get donuts? What are the other things that I want of the camshaft? Because it'll already do all the other stuff. Now, what do I want the camshaft to do? You don't need a formula to tell you that. You just need to answer those questions and then pick whatever camshaft that will satisfy those needs. For Speaker of the House. No, I did get my the only political shirt that I own. It's Ripley and Hicks. It's the only way to be sure. Do you regain lost horsepower when reducing compression ratio when you add boost? 100 kilowatts at 10 to 1, reduced to 85 kilowatts at 8 to 1, running 1 bar, would you see closer to 200 kilowatts or 170? If you will double the power output of whatever the NA power output is with the compression ratio that you are running. So if your 8 to 1 motor makes 170 kilowatts and not 200 kilowatts, you're going to be doubling the 170, not the 200. The turbo TVSS is laggy with the VS Racing 88 millimeters, pretty big. 88 T6 with a 96 turbine, 1.32. Can't really do anti-lag with a factory ECM. Higher stall fixes that. Yeah, you can stall that. Do you need the 88 millimeter turbo? Like, how much power are you trying to make with that thing? An 88 millimeter turbo will make a lot of power. The other guy's LFX. I haven't run any of those. Bondo's in the house. Yeah, Brandon. Like I said, David's a great guy. I love talking to him. Love hearing his stories, and he's got like an unlimited source of information and stuff. But doing a formula to take into account optimized power production or whatever, that's all fantastic. But that's not the only questions that people ask about camshafts. So you, and I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about me or anybody else here. But everybody has their own questions and their own ideas of what thing that they would pick and why they would pick it, and that has nothing to do with the power output, especially when you can make the power output with like I said, hundreds and hundreds of cams would allow you to do that. The hundo, and one more moment. I told you about my buffalo nickel, right? Soup's awesome. And I'm showing, this is the buffalo side. Yeah, look at that. 1927. I hope I can't really see very well, but it's hard to see because it's been rubbed off a little bit. I'm hoping it's a 1927 S. I don't think it is. I think it's worth a nickel. I think it's worth a nickel. But, that's 11 cents. I do like the wheat pennies, though. Taking my phone, well, to upload pics. Good. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. Yes, I have stuff in the morning. Try to get on in the morning if I can. If not, I will be seeing you around this time, 7 o'clock or so. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.